What's today? There's 6th, 7th, yeah. Hey, good evening all. Welcome to the October 7th meeting of the Growth Planning Committee. And we will start off as always with our introductions. So, Tom?
Tom Smith.
Jane Evelyn.
Paul Hogan.
Dan Saunders?
Ann Martin.
Galen Webley, support staff.
Nadia Crockett-Current, support staff. And
Liz Johnson.
All right.
I
So I have
can't
to
vote.
take back what I said.
I can't vote.
you're fine.
Yeah. So first I'd like to, Mr. Wengel had to resign from our board for personal reasons. Wish him luck in his new adventures and wanted to thank him really for his participation over the last year plus. And so thanks, Rob, and hope at some point you were able to join another committee. Okay. So on our agenda tonight, we got a couple topics. Actually, I don't recall seeing the minutes from the last one, and if I missed it.
That's what Galen and I were just talking about.
Yeah.
Whether we had
So
seen those.
we
come through.
could table that for the next meeting. So the first thing on the agenda, therefore, will be the stormwater discussions. And so, I'll be honest, I didn't get a chance to look at what was just recently sent.
Yep.
I was finishing up for work, so maybe we can share that.
Yep.
Online and kind of walk through it.
Yeah, for folks that are new to the board, just so you're aware, to access these documents, we wanted to just put on this share screen. Nadia, can we walk them through how to access the document? Because the public can have access to this as well.
Sure.
So if you go on the town's website, under the Growth Planning Committee website, so here's the home page for the town. And if you go under boards and committees, you'll notice that there is the Growth Planning Committee. If you click that, you'll see the first button in blue right there. It says Growth Planning Committee SharePoint. And if you click that, that's where, again, the public and members can view the document of what the town is reviewing at present. So I always recommend to folks just bookmark that page. That way you have quick access to it, and it's easy to find instead of going through all those other steps that we're going through. So with that being said, by way of background, the town has been looking at this for quite some time. For the newer members to understand, we had a major storm take place in Kennebunkport that caused a lot of flooding and damage, and it started a conversation about the importance of really addressing stormwater, controlling stormwater on site for new development. So we already know we have existing problems, but we want to try to prevent the bleeding and hemorrhaging from in the future. And so we brought in Maine DEP to give a presentation to the board, and this was, again, a few months ago, almost a year ago. And they gave us with some information on what low-impact development standards are that we could implement as a town, how towns are addressing stormwater, and then through that conversation, the committee asked staff to research what other towns in the area have done, and so we did a big spreadsheet on that as well, and that's available for new members if you need to look at that. But after we did that spreadsheet, we got direction from the committee that said, okay, this is the things that we would like to address. And so with that being said, now we have the performance standards, so this is under section 240. This would be a new standard in our land use ordinance for what would control any type of development in town would have to meet these standards.
Hey, Galen.
Yep.
Either now or when you recall which meeting it was, we should share that meeting date with new members so they could watch that.
Oh, yes, yep, we can
Because
send you that
he was good.
link.
He was very informative.
Yep, we can send you that link to the DEP meeting. That way you all have an understanding of what was discussed at that meeting to catch up. So with that being said, I can walk you through each of these sections just to go over what they will do, how it would apply in town, and then I'll answer any questions that you might have as we go through these sections. So the first section is dealing with what would be the stormwater requirements for structures that are 800 square feet or greater. So they are required to do a site plan layout with a building permit application with the code enforcement officer. And then they would have to outline how over a 10 and 25-year storm event, they will manage the best practices. So how are they going to control the stormwater that it meets the pre-development on the site? And so when we say pre-development on the site, what was existing there before the development took place? And so when we say 10 and 25-year events, what do we mean by that? Essentially what we're saying is, what is the average rainfall that occurs in that 10-year period or 25-year period? So what's that rainfall amount? And every site has runoff. You know, I think we need to recognize that as a town. We understand that there is always going to be, even if you have a grassy area, there is a certain flow rate that occurs on the site. And so if you decide to make something that was vegetative and make it now impervious, that way the water's now gliding off at a faster velocity, you have to slow that down and make it flow at the same rate as what was there before the development took place. So that
Again.
is essentially what that means.
Question?
Yep.
On the language, all new structures 800 square feet or greater. So I want to put a big family room on the back of my house or a brand-new kitchen, and it's going to be larger than 800 square feet, adding on to my structure. Is that included in that language or not?
Yeah, so it's any new structure that's 800 square feet or greater. That would, so if an addition, that you do an addition to it, that's 900 square feet, you would then have to do a stormwater plan.
I'm not sure that language captures it. I would interpret that to mean a new structure. And when I'm adding on to a house, I don't think of that as a new structure. I think of it as an addition to an old structure.
Okay.
Are you
Could we
referring
say-
to,
Could we say or additions to existing structures?
Let's go to the definition section of the ordinance
Good
and
thought.
read what the definition says for, I'll pull that up for you. Let's see here. Does it want to work?
Oh, really?
240 definitions. Because I think our language is quite inclusive. So structure is anything built for the support, shelter, or enclosure of persons, animals, goods, or property of any kind, together with anything constructed or erected with a fixed location above, below, or upon the surface of the ground or water. So that's
and that's
Yeah.
240?
That's in section 242.2. That's your definition section.
Could it, I guess it's the new
Yeah.
that's throwing me off. Wondering if we could make it clearer
You can make it put all new structures and additions.
to structures.
Yeah,
or-
but I think you probably capture under that definition, because technically it's a new change, but I think for clarity, it might be good just to add new structures or additions to existing, just so everybody, or put it in the new structure, put it in the structure piece to
And
include,
Well,
definition.
right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if that impacts anything else.
But does new include replacement, 100% of the old?
Good question.
I would not say you're replacing in kind, so you're not expanding.
Okay.
Right.
So
And,
could-
and if
could-
you were replacing exactly the same structure, you also wouldn't be altering your pre and post development. Your post development should be exactly the same as your pre-development, because you wouldn't be changing anything on the lot.
So as long as a new footprint doesn't exceed the old plus
Yeah.
799, you're okay.
Yeah, the next one is 800 and smaller.
So if I had what happens if I had 800 square foot, but I have an 800 square foot deck and then I turn it into a porch that's covered, right? Now the water's gonna shut off differently than it certainly would off a flat surface, so. Should we include something like that in this as well? It's not changing the footprint, because the deck's there already. But I'm changing how it,
Would that be
You're
seen,
changing the flow, certainly.
changing the flow, for sure.
would that be
It's like-
seen as an improvement? Would that?
Yeah, I would say so.
So to take a deck and then make it into an
I would say it's an
enclosed-
improvement, because you can use it more.
I would maybe call that, though, still an addition to an existing
I mean, would I have to
Structure,
get-
if we
I'd have
called
to get
it-
a permit
Is a
for
deck a
that?
structure?
Yeah, you would.
Oh, we need to get a permit, so that.
Yeah.
would-
Mhm.
Okay.
Anytime you want to put a deck on, you would get a
Well,
building
if I had
permit.
that deck already and I wanted to put
Usually
a
what-
three-season porch, I'd still have to get a permit.
Usually as a rule, we
Yeah.
say anything, if you're altering the structure, like, so something like, if you're changing your siding, you don't usually need a permit, but if you're altering the actual structure, you do, so something like adding a roof,
Okay.
you would definitely want a.
So
building.
replacing windows in kind, that's just regular maintenance.
Sure.
But if you were changing the size of it, because you're gonna have to change the framing, that's when you would require a building permit. So anything structural,
Okay.
we would need.
So I would say that we would be able to classify that as an
Sure.
addition if there was an 800 square foot roof.
So for clarity,
Hang on.
the intent of this would cover changing a deck to a.
It's already impervious surface, so
Yeah.
we're already covered by that.
Okay.
I'm not,
Okay,
yeah.
very good.
Wait, so you're saying I'm changing from a deck?
Yep.
Where the water's just going right through it, and all of a sudden I'm putting a roof and walls, and it's 800 square feet or more, that wouldn't fall under this?
No, because the deck
The
is still
structure's already
impervious. Yeah, the structure's already there. And
It's
there is some runoff that is occurring because of the deck, even though it's not at a pitch. So I don't think that's,
Okay.
When we receive, like, if we have, for something that comes in front of the planning board, if it's a site plan with a lot of impervious surface or a subdivision, we receive stormwater plans, and they don't specify the type of impervious surface usually when they're doing those calculations. So I think to Galen's point, if it was already counted as impervious surface, even if they redid the stormwater plan, it wouldn't change because it would still just be counted as impervious surface. The nuance of slanted roof versus flat deck would be lost largely in that.
Okay, thanks.
so yeah, there's different R values that are associated depending on what the coverage is. So like for pavement, it's about 98%, structures is around 90, so the R value is 90. Grass is at like 20, so it all depends on, the higher the number, it's more impervious, and so that's how it's calculated. So the next one is dealing with dwelling structures of less than 800 square feet. So again, this is more for like additions that you're only doing 400 square feet of, I don't know where we went.
I don't know either. Okay, here we
Okay.
go.
So if you're dealing with like 400 square feet addition, or you're adding a deck that's 400 square feet, we're really just requiring here that you use best management practices. So it's a less stringent requirement. They don't have to show us proof that it's going to meet pre and post development. We just encourage them to really use low impact development standards that can be found in Maine DEP's publication that's cited.
So they have to tell you what they're doing
Yes.
to comply?
Section C is dealing with outside the shoreline and resource protection zones, that we are giving them the benefit of using pervious concrete pavers and pavement and other pervious surfaces for stormwater management. So some lots that are maybe smaller in size, we would say that because the material that you're using for your driveway is pervious, not impervious, we would give you then that ability to not say that's calculated as part of lot coverage. And that is important because we are changing what the definition of lot coverage is in this amendment as well. So before, lot coverage only applied to any structures on the lot. We are changing that outside of shoreline zone to include all impervious surfaces. So what does that mean? It means we're gonna have a lot of lots that are over 20% that are non-conforming if we make this change. And it's because we're trying to make them address their stormwater. That's our rationale for why we're making that change. So does that make sense? Because in shoreline zoning, we can't make that change on giving that discount. The state of Maine at one point in time, they used to give a discount for using grass pavers. It was like these interlocking pavers that would have grass growing in between it. And they realized after doing many studies that the grass was dying and it just became compact with earth. And so it became impervious. And so the state stopped giving that discount in shoreline zoning. So while we can be less restrictive in outside the shoreline zone, we still have to honor that any pervious concrete or any other type of material that's used in shoreland zone is still considered impervious.
And you're going from 100% counting to 0% counting, nothing in between.
Say that.
The other way, so zero, right now, nothing other than structures,
Correct.
so
Yes.
driveways,
No, I
patios,
understand that,
yep.
but I mean,
And then,
the distinction between impervious and
oh,
pervious,
well,
Yeah.
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 So it's considered
You're-
0, yep,
it's 0 to 100. You're
Yeah.
not saying, oh, it's 50, counts as 50%.
correct. No,
or-
we didn't add that in there,
Yeah.
no. Because if it's designed correctly, they should not be having any sheet flowing occurring
Got it.
during normal storm events. And I always have to preface that with the 10 to 25 years, that is a snapshot in time for newer members. So while the town may receive an application in 2025 that says it's meeting our 10 and 25-year storm events, the storm events are going to continue to change over time, as we see with climate change. And so that number is going to be different 10 years from now. And so we still might get complaints from the office saying, I'm still getting runoff from my neighbor. Well, it might be that we have heavier rain events more frequently.
Sure.
And so it was only designed in a snapshot in time in 2025. That was when it was designed to meet that standard. So we just need to preface that when people ask, well, why am I getting flooding occurring?
Is that 25-year, 10-year, is that over a time period?
They do average it, yes.
They do have?
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, you could have a tremendous downpour for 40 seconds, that will just lead to sheet flow.
Yeah.
Right, and then the rest of the storm, and you still only get an 8-year storm or something.
Yeah.
That stuff's gonna be running off here.
Yep. So it goes off each year, it changes.
It's gonna make it better.
Yeah,
It's just not.
we're at least addressing the issue.
Yeah.
Any questions on that discount that's offered to
No.
reducing lot coverage calculations? Okay. Section D is existing wetlands, may be used to direct non-parking. So again, when you have parking spaces, there's usually pollutants that are associated with vehicles. You know, there's sometimes leaky oil, antifreeze, wind washer, I can't speak.
Windshield
Washer
wiper.
fluid, any of that stuff. As long as it's not that type of pervious runoff, you could direct that into an existing wetland, because a wetland is very similar to a rain garden, as we've discovered. So as long as it's directing it into that location, that's perfectly fine. Use your existing resources on the property, don't fill them in. They're serving a purpose. The next section is dealing with farm and forest zone. So in forested areas, this was the discussion about footprint clearing a lot. So instead of just clearing an entire forested area, you would have at least a buffer perimeter for the parcel in the farm and forest zone to be kept from being cleared. And so the reason for this is, again, in farm and forest zone, you have a 3-acre lot minimum requirement. That will not change in any state legislation. We can still keep the 3-acre minimum. So the thought process is, by having that 50-foot buffer around the sides, you're at least keeping, again, it's more impervious, more vegetation there to stop stormwater runoff. That's the intent behind that. So that was fingerprint.
50-foot buffer that retains trees.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. If the lot's completely forested, you would have to keep that 50-foot strip. You can clear it all in the middle of it, but you would have to keep that 50-foot on all the sides. And so if the lot was a meadow, like that would not, the standard would not apply. It's just if there's existing tree canopy in our forested areas.
Got it.
And I could see the benefit, but there's also lots out there that you may have to build on within the normal setback, because of it's got marsh or it's vernal pools or something else that's gonna force you to the edge. I don't wanna prevent someone from building if they're meeting their setbacks. Maybe that's gonna have a greater challenge in how do they manage their water, right? They, capture their runoff off the roof and run some plumbing or something so they get to go off to the backside instead of the front to the neighbor. But I think we need to have some way of getting out of that for those lots that it will exist like that. Because there'll be many of those out there, right? There's a lot of wet areas in farm and forest.
To the extent practicable?
or maybe a bunch of ledge or something, and you really keep, it's gonna cost you a ton of money to build here and keep your 50-foot buffer versus being able to bring up to the setback, throw in some other type of water management system to try to maintain the water on your property, which is the goal, right? So that's almost like I would say almost like a thing you could do, just
Mhm.
maintain a 50-foot buffer and that would pass, but not a requirement, right?
Yeah, I would say, like, I can see exemptions being offered if you, like, let's say for septic tank placements. I think that's something reasonable that we can put in there, like, yeah, okay, if the lot has a lot of ledge or something, and maybe you do have to go into the 50-foot buffer to put a septic tank. I think that's a reasonable exemption that we could offer people.
I was gonna say, we do have some precedent for that as well in our, I think subdivision ordinance maybe, where we do have kind of some language that says, like, unless the applicant can prove that there's no other feasible
Practical way of
location
developing.
than the one proposed.
I have a,
I hate
I'm
proving
I'm
ourselves
struggling with
innocent.
the word impervious.
Government's always trying to get you to prove yourself innocent.
My experience as an engineer has always been,
Make sure we talk into the microphones because we do have a note taker that,
so I'm struggling with the use of the word impervious. My experience as an engineer, and this goes way back, is that there's a word called impermeable, which means water is not allowed to pass through.
Right.
And impervious always meant to me, water doesn't affect it. It won't dissolve it, et cetera, et cetera. And I just looked on the phone here for a definition, and I see that impervious also can mean it doesn't let water pass through. So you get two words now. One, both meaning the same thing in one context for impervious. But somebody else could argue is, no, my deck is not impervious because it doesn't allow the water to pass through, but it might be absorbed by the deck. So I'm not sure, again, if there's somebody could argue that maybe that I meet the criterion for impervious, but I don't necessarily meet what you want it to be. Does that make sense to you? I'm trying to explain that.
yeah, I think I know that there's different, technical definitions when it comes to what is considered impervious. I think the state has done a very good job at articulating what is considered pervious and what is considered impervious because of dealing with stormwater for MS4 communities. So I think we do have a clear definition and guidelines on what that is. Whether that is the material, attributes that occur, from an engineering perspective. It might be a different,
My concern is somebody who thinks the word should be impermeable may design a deck or whatever it is that is actually impervious in a different context, and you want to come back and go after him because he built this thing contrary to the rules here, and he could argue, look in the dictionary, it is impervious.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, avoiding problems is always better than solving them later on if you could avoid that. So I never, to my knowledge, ever heard the use of impervious the way you're using it now until tonight. I've always thought that was impermeable. So I'm wondering, is it a problem just because the state says it should be this way? Somebody else could argue, no, it is impervious. You think it's not.
It might be in the state regs, and just from my work experience where I dive into regulations very often, the definitions are very
Might be there.
critical because you're reading something, you go, that doesn't make any sense. Common definition is this, but then when you read it, the definition is actually different.
So that puts the onus
regulation.
on
So
the builder or the homeowner
Sure.
Yeah,
to go into the
anyone
state regs and find out what's
understand
meant
what
Yeah.
by,
impervious
That's
means.
why.
what the definition of is.
Yeah, so it's not always the common sense definition.
Okay.
We do have a definition in our ordinance
Yes.
as well,
Really?
which may or may not assuage your concerns. That portion of a lot or site which is or will be improved with buildings, structures, driveways, parking lots, pedestrian walkways, signs, and other improvements on the surface of the ground which are more impervious to water than the natural surface of the site.
It doesn't
That's what we
define
have.
impervious, though, what you just said.
But it
uses-
does for the purpose of the ordinance.
Hmm.
It does a fine job of that.
it defines impervious. You're saying it doesn't define pervious.
Pervious.
No, it says the water must be, the structure must be impervious, but I didn't really hear a definition of impervious when you spoke.
Yeah, we just,
Can you say it again, please?
Yeah, here, let me pull it up, actually, on the screen here.
You may want to zoom in too.
So we have that portion of a lot or site which is or will be improved with buildings, structures, driveways, parking lots, pedestrian walkways, signs, and other improvements on the surface of the ground which are more impervious to water than the natural surface of the site.
Does not define impervious.
Yeah, you're right.
No, but
Say
it does for the purpose of this ordinance, this is what impervious is.
No, it says it must be impervious, but what does that mean?
It's D.
If any of those conditions exist on the property, it's considered part of the impervious surface.
Anything more impervious than the natural, so I think what I'm understanding is that the two definitions that you're hearing are that they, for impervious, can you say them again? One of them is that it's less likely to absorb water and,
No. The definition I've always used, the understanding for something that allows water to pass through is permeable. If it doesn't allow it to pass through, it's impermeable. And impervious always meant it wasn't affected by fluids. So it wouldn't dissolve, it wouldn't disintegrate, it wouldn't whatever it was. But they meant different things. Now I haven't practiced engineering for a long time. Things might have changed. And I realize that the state definition, if it exists, would trump whatever the old definitions were. But I would hate to see somebody get themselves into a bind. I've built decks on my houses by myself in the past in Massachusetts. And I just went to the state and got what it was, and I built to the state specs and so forth. But nobody really worried about what the definition of a certain word was, because there's common understanding. I don't recall permeability or perviousness, whatever, as being an issue.
If they didn't have any drainage concerns.
May well be.
I mean, most towns didn't 20 years ago have
Exactly,
anything
yeah.
related.
And I would also recommend you don't use the word in the definition of the word you're trying to define.
Well, it's defining impervious surface
Yeah.
versus impervious. And then
I still
supplying-
would use a different description
Yeah,
for
that's-
impervious in that sentence.
So I believe
what's the
this
state
is
law?
from chapter 1000, that definition of impervious surface, because it comes from
State
shoreline
law.
zoning.
It's a state definition.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You can't say, to your point, you can't say an impervious surface must be impervious.
Right.
Except in Maine.
Well, I'm not gonna build any more decks,
So it
that's
makes
for
us
sure.
different.
So-
That's what the state law is, that's what the state law is.
AI said that
Well, can
impervious
we
and
make it-
impermeable are basically the same
Same
thing.
thing.
Impervious
Can we
I
is
looked at
descriptive?
my phone too.
Yeah. Is a broader term. Let's not let water pass.
I put up chapter 500 now. This is the stormwater standards for Maine DEP, and they say impervious area is an impervious area means the total area of a parcel covered with low permeability material that is highly resistant to infiltration by water, such as asphalt, concrete, or rooftop, and areas such as gravel roads and unpaved parking areas that will be compacted through design or use to reduce their permeability. Common impervious areas include but are not limited to rooftops, walkways, patios, driveways, parking lots or storage areas, concrete or asphalt, paving, gravel roads, packed earthen materials, and macadam, and other surfaces which similarly impede the natural infiltration of stormwater. Pervious pavement, pervious pavers, pervious concrete, and under-drained artificial turf fields are all considered impervious. For the purposes of determining jurisdictional thresholds, the department may, depending on the design, consider such facilities to provide alternative treatment as described in a section of the chapter. Yeah. Long paragraph,
That's good.
Yeah.
but quite,
quite
I
detailed.
think that's what that's saying. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is that good?
I'll quit.
I will say, we do a lot of work with impervious surface with the planning board applications. I haven't seen anyone try to get around our definition of impervious. It's, I think the inclusion of like the building structures, driveways,
Right,
parking lots, like it's
examples.
very clear what the ordinance is intending to say. And so I think we certainly have, it doesn't mean we can't explore making it
Well-
more, like adding different words in there, but it certainly is, the intention is very, very clear. And so we haven't had any issues with people trying to skirt around that.
I can't resist. The definition that you read, Galen, said impervious to me. What I heard you say was impervious means impermeable. I said impervious is not permeable. If you go back and read it again, you use one word defining the other.
Total area of a parcel covered with a low permeability material that is highly resistant to infiltration by water.
Yeah, permeable,
Low permeability,
permeable,
low permeability.
yes. Not low impervious ability.
But water gets through everything at the end of the day.
So it's possible,
I mean, it will, just. it
yeah,
gets
maybe
through
the
everything.
Yeah.
impermeable is too
Anybody owns a boat
much.
knows that, right? It's.
And then they give the examples to
Yes.
try to make it
More
clear,
clear.
plain language.
I have a sort of related question. Let's say there's a new house being built, they put in a gravel driveway
Mhm.
to do the permeability. 5 years later, they pave the driveway. A, do they need a permit to pave that? And B, if they don't, then that skews the ratio.
So good question. So we count, so gravel driveways in shoreland zone and paved driveways are considered the same thing.
Really?
Yes,
In shoreland.
in
What
shoreland.
about not in shoreline?
We don't count any of that as lot coverage right now because it's not a structure. So it doesn't matter if it's gravel, because we have people ask this question all the time. Can I use gravel in shoreland zone versus pavement? Will that give me a discount? Like it's maybe 80% instead of it being 100%. And we're like, no, we can't. The state's clear that it's all 100%. To answer your other question, depends on if they're widening. If they are widening the traveled lane, that would require a land use permit. So it all depends on what they want to do. But we would still consider it 100%, 100%. Doesn't matter if it's, you want to do gravel, you want to do pavement, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Any more questions on the footprinting? It sounds like we need to figure out a little bit of exemptions in there to help in case there is like some design.
Yeah.
Well, I think really, honestly, on E, I think E is one of a solution that someone could use in farm and forest, right? Like we talked about rain gutter buckets and other low LID ideas to maintain. But if for some reason you can't do that, maybe you can only do 30 feet, right? Then you have to apply some other type of method, that's all. So I don't want to make that a restriction, then we have to get an exemption versus this is one way you can do it, here's another way if you can't manage that. Or you want to put your home closer, you don't want to have a 40-foot, 100-foot driveway or whatever to get in.
I have a question on vernal pools.
Mm-hmm.
So this, would an exemption mean that a vernal pool could be used, that area of the vernal pool be used to compensate? Or is there protection to a vernal pool?
So there is new statewide protections that protect vernal pools. There's a 100-foot, for vernal pools of significance, I'll put that like that. So vernal pools of significance, so they have a certain amount of egg masses of certain amphibians or other types of wetland invertebrates that are protected by the state. If it becomes a vernal pool of significance, there is a 100-foot no disturbance of any trees or anything within 100 feet of that vernal pool. And then there's still the 250 buffer, which can be outside that 100, so there's 150 additional feet. That can be disturbed 25% cumulative within that buffer radius. But that requires state approvals for that. They can't just do it. Yeah,
All right, so there is some protection.
there's protections for significant vernal pools, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So then, section F is projects proposing grading on site, I don't know, where
Why
did
is
we go?
this-
Don't know where we went.
It keeps jumping around on me a little bit.
Okay, there we were.
Okay. So this is dealing, when there's proposed grading on a site, they should show us existing and proposed contours for proposed development. That's a pretty common practice we see in subdivision developments and in some site plan applications, just showing us, what's the existing contours, and usually 2-foot elevations, and how is that going to be different once they are done their grading. And then again, we're trying to here limit the grading is necessary for vehicular access. We're trying to keep grading at a minimum. It should stay with what's naturally there. But we understand that when it comes to vehicular access to a lot or foundations of proposed structures, you might need to do some grading because of the ledge and the topography of the area. But not just do the whole grading of the entire lot just because they want to terraform it. So that's what that section means. Any questions on that?
So the second sentence is meant to say the only grading that you would allow is relative to the access
And the building of the structure, yeah.
and the building of the structure.
Yeah.
So if the backyard slopes away or slopes such that the water, you can't just dump the water onto your neighbor's yard by changing the grade and pushing everything in a direction from where it
Right.
went previously. You have the other, if it's larger than 800 square feet, they have to manage
You
it.
have to control it, yep.
Okay,
Where I see this is like if you have more of like a hill area, they need to grade it out to make it level for the house, right? So there's gonna be some grading there, but it's not like they can grade the entire hilled area to make it all flat.
Yeah.
The website died on me for a second.
died?
Not really sure what happened, but
Okay. Okay, so that's F. And then G is regarding, and again, this is more codifying some areas that we already have in our floodplain management ordinance, but it just codifies it further, is the practice of topsoil fill-in for elevated structures within an area of special flood hazard. So that's anywhere in the 100-year floodplain would be prohibited. So you can't just topsoil fill in. It's again, we've seen this in some cases. It's cheaper for people to do. I wish I had our Lego set to show you the differences. But basically, instead of just having piers that go up and then a long staircase, what people will do is they will put fill and make it less of an incline or steep access into the structure. And so when you do that, you might actually elevate your neighbor that you're now causing more stormwater or the floodplain to go into your neighbor's property. So we're preventing that practice from occurring. That's what that means.
that's a great idea.
So those are the sections that we have for stormwater. Were there any additional questions or things that the committee thought we needed to address or thought we should add or change?
And just to be clear on E, I wouldn't vote for this with E in there.
Yep.
As written. Okay.
but with
Even
the
with exemptions.
but with the
Even with
exemption,
we gotta do it some way differently. So, I don't wanna
But
make,
if the
I don't wanna
exempt-
make properties that are like this already non-conforming because of this requirement.
Well, that's only if they're proposing development.
Or just,
Anything that's there doesn't matter
Yeah.
until there's a proposal for development.
I mean, why can't you just change the wording to say,
I mean, I just think that that should just be one of the mechanisms that one can use.
Yeah,
The key is to keep the water on the property, so if they can come up with a different solution, then it's accomplishing the same thing and we don't need the buffer.
forested areas on a lot shall either retain a 50-foot buffer on each side, blah, 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 or another, however you word it, or another,
Or develop another proposed
Flood management.
site development that meets the
Yeah,
intent.
I mean, it's,
Well, are they asking for a buffer that could be, not necessarily on the edges of the property, but you could have a buffer in different parts of the property, so you have if you needed a certain square footage to be met, to meet this requirement, could that be fulfilled in other sections of the property? I actually don't want to lose the trees.
yeah, and that might be the case, right?
So, my thought is that if we're saying that, okay, 25%, by having that 50-foot buffer, we have 25% area of the forested area. Now, if someone says, we can't do it on the edges of the property, but we could do it in a section at the back where there would be, the 25%, but of course then I'm missing, I think that people like to have some sort of forested area, but that would be by choice.
Yeah, that's the thing, I mean, the goal of of this section of the ordinance is keep your water on your property for the 10 and 25-year storms. And I think, and that's for any lot in town, right? And we don't identify all the ways to do that within here. There are some guidelines to use. And I think this can be a guideline that could be used in any, I mean, it's not gonna make sense in village residential, but maybe in free enterprise, you may have a 5-acre lot. And this is one way that you could accomplish that management of the stormwater, just leave a 50-foot buffer,
Is this intended
instead
to
of
have,
it being a requirement.
a dual purpose, maintaining forest and farm look and feel as, in addition
Yeah.
to flood management?
That's part of it, is because your farm and forest zone is to preserve the rural character of the town. So I did my little drawing here just to show, like, this is what the intent is really to keep these green tracks connected. Yes, you have footprint that's disturbed, but you're keeping at least a 50-foot buffer around these sides. And usually in subdivisions, you do have to keep them compact. You're not allowed to make flag lots, they're called, or spaghetti lots is the other name that they call it from a planning perspective. And so what that is when they make these narrow strips, and then all of a sudden they jut out and make these awkward shapes that you see. You're not supposed to do that. And so you're supposed to keep them confined and compact as much as possible when it comes to a subdivision development. And so I think what Dan's referring to is when people create these spaghetti lots, you can't obviously keep a 50-foot non-disturbance because they're too narrow to make that work, which is a concern. But they shouldn't be creating those lots in the first place. They should be compact lots or have road frontage that has a right-of-way access that leads into the lot. They shouldn't be creating their own little parcel cutout.
So question,
Yep.
I'm doing a brand new subdivision, it's completely forested right now. Can I clear cut the 10 acres and put up houses, and what would the planning board require of me,
Yeah, so if you're,
with this aside?
if you have a subdivision that connects to a public street, that frontage of the public street has a 50-foot,
Already?
no disturbance requirement in that first 50 feet. That's the only requirement that you have right now
And
in a
buffers
subdivision.
for neighbors on the sides, nothing?
No,
Just the regular
just the regular
setbacks.
lot setbacks.
So 15 feet in most zones
Right.
from.
But we don't
for side
require any
setbacks.
trees, bushes,
Correct.
shrubs, fences?
No.
And there are plenty of single-family residents that don't have that.
No, but I'm just wondering in the context of the subdivision,
Yeah.
what's our standard?
We do currently, though, when we have this, when a subdivision comes through, we do, and the planning board requires the applicant to give a clearing envelope, and they're not allowed to disturb outside the area that they give as a clearing envelope. And the planning board will push back at them if they think the clearing envelope is too big and unreasonably large. So while we don't have a set buffer, we do have this kind of consistent practice by the board of setting a very reasonable clearing envelope that is not, that leaves a decent amount of forested buffer, if it's a forested lot, a decent amount of forested buffer for
And
the
if-
other lots.
If you deny my application because I refuse to change it, who wins when I sue the town?
You can go to the courts and appeal it, but
No, I'm just saying, who wins? Who wins that case? I mean, if you don't have the specificity other than a tradition of,
Or you're wanting the written law.
If, so it's, I think it's a little bit, in terms of the planning board, it's a little bit nuanced. The planning board does actually have the authority, they can request a tree survey of all the trees on a lot, and they do have the authority to protect trees that they deem significant and worth protecting. But I think that just because of the character of Kennebunkport, most developers automatically choose quite a conservative clearing envelope because they know that people buying those houses are going to want a forested lot. So far, it has not come up that we've had a lot of back and forth about the acceptable size of the clearing area.
and it does impact their stormwater management plan. So that's the other thing, because if you get
In a
rid of the canopy in
Yeah.
subdivisions,
or 800 square foot,
right, if that goes into
if this-
effect, yeah.
if we include this.
Well, because we're talking about the farm and forest zone, I think that this is exactly what, that protection of that farm and forest zone, that appeal of Kennebunkport, that people have expressed the vision of the town. They like the greenery, they like the beautiful flowers. And I think that when you have homes that are, have a surrounding, have a sense of privacy by nature, by the trees, et cetera, and the wildlife and the bird life, which is protected, I think we have other language in our vision statement, which is supportive of that. I do understand people purchase a lot, and think, well, I want to build such and such. Well, know that before you buy the lot, what the rules are, first of all. But secondly, I think you have the best situation there where a 50-foot to an additional 50-foot that are abutting based on a lot line, I think is very attractive. I think that it's helpful also for storm runoff that we've been discussing. So I'm okay with this as it's written so far. I understand that, we wanted to look at exemptions, but quite frankly, with the development that's going on, it's going to be interesting how many exemptions are gonna be requested. So I support the 50-foot,
And when you can put multiple,
yes,
when our density is going to increase
right, no,
in every part of town, or
yes.
not in,
Well, not where we don't have.
Shouldn't be, yeah, it shouldn't be out in
Where we don't
the
have
farm and
infrastructure,
forest.
it won't.
right, it shouldn't be in
At the
farm and
moment.
forest,
You're right.
for the most part.
It's not good.
Again, I could see, we can definitely put a balance in there with just septic tank placement. I think that could be a challenge in certain sites where, you do need to put a septic tank maybe within that 50-foot buffer. I think that makes sense. And, maybe for lots of record, that way you have some sort of like, for the people who are grandfathered that have been having a parcel since 1989, they are, 1985, they don't, this standard does not apply to them. Like, I think that's a fair balance, but I'll take direction from the board.
I mean, there are an awful lot of lots in the farm and forest that are not on the main public roads, right? They're on offshoots, right? And there's no reason for that to apply, so everyone else has the vision as they drive through the area, right? Because you don't drive by those homes.
Right, you don't know they're there.
Yeah, I mean, if you go down Goose Rocks Road, I mean, there's all these offshoots where there's properties are way, way back.
Yeah.
So you don't see that. There might be 5 or 6 homes back there, I have no idea, from the road.
Well, but then those trees are removed, and now all of a sudden it's a whole different.
Well, it's a different look, but I'm
vision.
saying, well, maybe it needs to be more like the subdivision, where if you're on the public road, that you maintain that 50-foot if you can, but not.
Versus a private road.
Not any lot in farm and forest.
That's a thought.
I guess that's the piece.
I would just, again, I would urge the board to consider the long-term, that, we do have a lot of private roads, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to be public roads in the future. So I think we need to look long-term and what's in the best. Yeah.
If they do become public roads, they'll no longer be
They
farm
do,
forest.
some
Well, they
do,
won't be farm forest anymore, it'll just be another,
right.
it'll be,
Well,
it'll-
the goal is to save the trees, have a good visual from driving past, and protect retain the stormwater,
Mhm.
and protect the visual of those other houses back in there. So even if you can't see them from the road, it's still nice for the other homes that may already be there or may not be there yet to have the protection from the visibility of their neighbors. So, I mean, it checks off a lot of boxes.
but this is all about stormwater management, that's my only point. So,
But you've
if
added,
somebody can manage their stormwater without doing that, then they should be allowed to do so. That's all. But that's my only,
And
that's my
saying
point.
the exemption doesn't cut it?
No, I don't think it does. I think this should just be a tool in the toolbox.
but I,
You got a new lot, this is one way you can manage it. You give a 50-foot buffer, that's all you gotta do.
you know, those proposals can sometimes be very interesting to see how
Yeah.
they've taken a lot and made it into something that was not the original intent of the area. So I think there has to be some protection to this. I think that the septic proposal and there was the secondary that you had mentioned.
For lots of record.
For lots.
Yeah.
I think that that's sufficient. I think that's fair. It's,
This could impact many, many homes in Farm and Forest today if they wanted to add an addition that was greater than 800 square feet.
well,
No, this doesn't impact,
If you're gonna add an 800 square foot, you have to do a site plan.
right,
So
Mhm.
now you gotta come in and you're in Farm and Forest.
right.
may I ask, Farm and Forest, what sort of acreage is
3
there?
acres.
3
minimum.
acres. 3 acres minimum for a lot. Well, that should afford the ability to have the green space.
But some places out there
But some of them,
have
if they're-
sections of that 4 acre lot that has maybe a quarter of an acre to build a darn home on. Because the rest of it's
As far as,
marsh or
Yeah.
woods or ledge so we really have to
well,
be
that,
careful. 'Cause
But that
we don't know the dynamics of every single lot.
but that would be a lot of record, and would be exempted.
Not if it was created after 1985.
Not-
It wouldn't necessarily be a lot of record.
It's after 1985,
but then, so,
after this.
so I guess the question would be for me to understand better what considered exemption if no other buildable area then in the buffer zone, if that can be clearly stated to address some of these concerns. That would be the only, in the red, would be the only, would be where I'd like to start if we wanted to discuss that further.
So in terms
What
of,
exemptions?
like a for example, if someone's putting in a septic tank and they come and they say, we want to put the septic tank in this buffer zone. Septic tank, of course, it has to have, the leach field area has to be maintained as grass. It can't have any trees growing over it. They would have to give us documentation from the site evaluator that they'd said, we dug test pits on other areas of the lot, and this was the only place that is feasible, that has the right soils for a septic tank. And at that point, we can say, okay, you have had someone come out to the site, they've done the evaluation, and they agree that this is the only place possible to put a septic tank. That would be a place where we could grant an exemption then, because they've shown us they've had an expert out in the field on the site who's looked at the situation, and then we would be able to say, okay, you've done your due diligence, and clearly this is the only place that this is an option. So I think that we could consider something similar for like just a regular single family if someone wants to build a house there. Someone can come back to us and say, look, a surveyor comes back and they say everywhere except this one 2,000 square foot area is wetland, then we can say, sure, then obviously that's the only place that a house could possibly go. So and when I'm picturing the exemptions, that's kind of what we work with already when we offer exemptions to standards this way. So I think that that's probably how we would continue.
Dan, is your concern, if there's an existing house on a property if we exempt properties with an existing house on the property, and if they want to do an addition,
Well,
they're not subject to this. Now, if they own 50 acres and they want to put 10 more houses there, or 5 more houses maybe, which doesn't fall under the
Yeah.
subdivision rules, under the new rules. Let's say I want to break that into 5 lots. Got it.
How many acres are you breaking
So
into
like,
5 lots?
there's a 10 acre or 20 acre parcel that I've owned, and my farmhouse has been there forever, and I want to build an addition onto it. That's one scenario.
Right.
Would
So
we have this apply to that person?
if you're in the farm and forest
Yeah,
zone, yes.
Most
And,
of his lot is
and-
forested.
and I think it's worth noting, if someone is breaking up a lot as part of a subdivision, each lot that they break off has to have 3 acres of buildable land, basically. Because that net residential area that they have to meet excludes wetlands, or any other basically any unbuildable
Right.
land. So yes, they would have to.
So anyway, I'm just trying to pose 2 different scenarios. One, I just want to add on to my existing
Yeah.
house that's all forested except for my little tiny footprint, but now someone else buys it and they want to build a big addition. That's
That
one.
was one concern, and then there's this,
So could those people be exempted, if existing dwelling unit on the house, versus somebody who's going to put 4 more lots on it and not take it to the planning board under the new rules? And would they be subject to maintaining, that's going to be a big impact on the forest, as opposed to me adding my family
Yeah.
room and kitchen
but,
or accessory dwelling unit or whatever.
yeah, that's certainly part of it, but also, you drive down Witten Road, drive down Goose Rocks Road, drive down, you see homes on the road, right? I mean, some have nothing in front of them but the front lawn. That's what's there, right?
They've been there a long time,
Been there
though.
an awful long time, but that's what that area is.
But-
Right,
But
so
their
it's-
lot is not forested anymore. Those people who cleared 30 years
Sure, sure.
ago, they cleared, and they have a
I
huge
think we're
amount
all-
of green. They have their, John Deere and,
Exactly,
They
but
mowed
so
it.
I think it's almost trying to change this into something that it's not already. That's part of my concern.
Oh. and I would say I'd rather not have that everywhere in town. It happened,
Yeah, but most of those roads are, you drive down Arundel Road, most of them, except for the folks who could have, could afford a big lot and put up their gate, and they have a big home way, way back.
Yeah.
They wanted that privacy, well, good for
There's
them,
a little-
and they could do it, that's what they wanted to do, but other folks maybe just want to build a cape, and not have to put a 100-foot driveway, and be happy with a 50-foot.
right,
They don't have to shovel it that much, and all
Right.
the rest, and hop on the road and go where they're going. So, again, I just point back to, this is about stormwater and managing the water on our property. This is a tool that they could use. You could put a 50-foot barrier up, and that meets the requirement. You don't have to do anything else to prove it to us. Or, okay, you want to put your home within the normal setbacks, closer to the road, so you don't have to have it plowed or whatever your reason is, doesn't matter. It's not my concern. You still have to maintain your water. There are other options. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make. is
Well, one
I
of
don't want to force the town has a vision, but Farm Forest has houses that are right on the road,
You still have your picture?
so. And if it's a subdivision, that's got all different regs. Right?
See, one of my concerns is that when we're talking about this, we're trying to be sympathetic to people who might be harmfully affected by something that perhaps would be better stated in another part of an ordinance. I understand that, but what I'm feeling is that this does actually address the stormwater runoff.
It does, no doubt,
The natural soil,
absolutely.
That
It's-
really
it's-
is-
It's, all I'm saying, that's a tool in the toolbox. There are other things that one could do to also address it.
yes, but this is limiting itself, item E, to a forest buffer. That's it, that's all we're talking about is a forest buffer. And one of the concerns that I think that Galen mentioned is that I think that there probably are situations throughout the state of Maine where subdivisions are being connected to other subdivisions by roads, so that you actually have, these roads you're gonna
Could
have more
connect.
road frontage now, because they're saying they need to have access to these other residences. So there are other pitfalls
Sure.
along the way,
So I think we spent enough time on this.
okay?
Okay,
So, and I'm just one member of the, and, you know, we can vote on this, and I can vote opposed, and you guys can vote for, and that's fine, I'm not offended.
Okay.
All right, but that's just how I feel about it, so.
Was there anything else that we missed from, like, other things that you guys wanted us to
it was a
address
long
with
time
stormwater?
ago.
I know.
No,
Um,
I don't think so.
Again, we'll send you the spreadsheet again, that way you have
Yeah,
it,
send
like
that-
what other
that would be-
towns have.
Right.
And, you know, if there's other ideas you want to add to it, this is what we came up with, at least to start, as a starting point.
So the other thought I had
Yep.
was not to overload the planning board. Is there a way that we could do this, so it just comes to your office? And they set certain metrics, and you say, yep, you've hit the marks, and you have a plan. You don't have to go to the planning board.
So technically, these regulations are townwide standards, so they'll apply to code enforcement, and they can also apply to planning board applications. Planning board applications, if it's a site plan review, it's 10,000 square feet or greater. That's when they would be required to do stormwater management for the planning board under current land use ordinance. And then for subdivisions, they do automatically, they have to do it. So the planning board's used to this. We have a third-party engineer that does reviewing for those larger projects, and they review what the engineers have designed. So to answer your question, really, the planning board, the only time I'd see this would play out is if it was in, I guess it would be in shoreland zoning, when we have a non-conforming lot of record, and they're trying to rebuild the house or do an addition, and it's not conforming to the lot. That's where the planning board right now has jurisdiction on determining, is it meeting the greatest conformity possible? And so if they are not increasing their foundations or footprint, which they shouldn't be in shoreland zoning, they shouldn't be required to do any stormwater management at that point. If it's the same, they're just reconfiguring things, that shouldn't require planning board review. So I don't think this is gonna require really much more from the planning board.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
Because they're pretty busy already,
they are.
so I don't
I'm
want to.
trying to get them off
I don't wanna
that
add to
plate.
the load.
But they'll be less busy,
So if I understand correctly, there are site plans that you guys would be able to approve.
and under the new state law, subdivisions 5 and under
Right.
don't go to them.
Well,
Right.
If it's number of units,
Yeah.
right? So if they're still splitting the lots, that would still go to the planning board for subdivision approval. It's the apartment buildings, it's the multiplexes, they're
Units.
exempt now.
Could be one building, but 5 units.
Right.
We'll be
Oh,
going into a
okay.
huge education about
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
shortly. There's actually a
workshop.
Yep, workshop. You guys got the link
I
for
just saw
that.
the email, yeah.
So please sign up for that. That way we can all understand LD 1829 a lot greater detail, and get ready, because they will also, after this webinar, they will be having other in-person ones, I think, to go into greater depth. But they want to give people a general broad overview before scheduling those regional meetings. So
Who's sponsoring these?
SMPDC,
And for those who don't
Southern Maine
understand,
Planning Development Commission.
there
there
are
you
some people out there.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Were we getting the definitions, or was that all?
We would change the definition of lot coverage.
Yep.
To include, but I think that's the only
That's the only
definition.
one. Okay.
And potential updates to impervious surface.
Yep.
Yes.
So what were you saying, lot coverage is where is that?
That's in the definition section. You have it. So that's the definition of lot coverage.
So we would update to say, right now, we just say covered by structures, so we would update to say covered by structures and impervious surface, as well as exempting pervious, pavers, concrete, asphalt outside of shoreline zone.
And we currently just say, in the shoreline zone, it covers driveways, parking lots, other non-vegetative surfaces? Is that what that is?
Yes, other
Okay.
non-vegetative surfaces, but I think that we simply added a definition of lot coverage within the shoreline zone, maybe? 'Cause I see that this is crossed out. Anyways, the important thing is that we would add impervious surface and specifically exempt the pervious pavers, asphalt, concrete.
Because at that point, we're treating outside the shoreline zone as similar to what is in the shoreline zone.
Right, except you get the bonus if you're
Correct.
outside the shoreline, because we can do that.
Yep.
And we can't do that in, because of state law. Okay.
So those were the stormwater provisions.
Okay, so one of the other topics related to stormwater is certainly the sea level rise and storm events and storm surges and all that, and we have many of those areas within our growth area, just by the way we designed our growth map, right? Sort of the lower part of the town versus, or the southeastern part of the town versus. Do we need to do anything around there to, in addition to this, to sort of, any of those lots that are still developable that could be in those type of, I mean, we have the 100-year flood zone thing, but that doesn't cover like the 1.2-foot potential or 5-foot rise by 2050 or the 3.2 by 100, which right, that we included in our comp plan, and I think the state passed some law associated with those as part of your planning process.
I knew they counted the LIMWA, which was the wave action that's associated with storm surges, as part of the updated floodplain maps.
Okay.
So that took into consideration, where you have the wave action, where that's going to be devastating. But that's present. I don't know about future.
Okay.
So,
Because we do talk about in the comp plan, not building, certainly town-owned properties in those type of areas, and then critical structures within, even as part of the main climate action was for 8.8 feet, I think, for 100, should consider that, right? And that's why we were talking about during the plan, and I think the sewer department has been managing through their plan with was it Wright Pierce? I think that they worked with to identify those pump stations that could be at risk from flood inundation, right? So that we prepare for those going forward. But do we need to do that on sort of, I'm not sure how we would address that well, for residential properties that may still, that would have lots that would be in that hazard area?
Yeah, so, lots that are in, especially the floodplain, we would reduce anything that's in the floodplain right now. We would have to reduce any land that's in the floodplain from net residential area calculations. So there are gonna be some lots that maybe they were buildable before, they're now not, which I think is a good policy. I know there was discussion before of reducing the floodplain from the net residential area calculations in prior times. And I think that it's good public policy now that we shouldn't be building in floodplains. That's not where people should be living.
Sure.
It's not safe. It's gonna be probably underwater at some point. It's not where we should be spending public infrastructure dollars, but we have what's existing right now in Goose Rocks, and we have to certainly
Sure, absolutely.
make investments there where it's needed for sewer and wastewater capacity. But we need to prevent that in the future. So I think we do have a limit right now in our zoning that regardless of what the state does in making us change our zoning, we at least do reduce those areas from our net residential area calculations.
I have a question.
Yep.
If I'm building new house, I have to prove to you that I can put a septic here, that the soil's gonna perk. And it's in an area where, so I produce soil information, and the engineer says, in this soil, you need to build this kind of system, it's gotta be so big or whatever. But could we, or should we consider whether that field is gonna be in salt water? Like the ground level water in that area is already in salt water? We had an expert come in and tell us that when a septic system gets hit by salt water, it stops functioning as a septic system. You've expressed concern to us that if this happens, the state could say to us, you've got all these failures, you connect them to sewer, at significant public expense
Mhm.
on all of us.
Mhm.
So my question is, like, I know at Black Rock, their dug well did not function for Nonanton because it was too, it was too filled with salt.
Was it Slinick?
Yeah, so they had to dig Nonanton paid to dig their own well. And that's a mile from the beach.
Mm.
There, the firehouse lost their well to salt water. Our firehouse at Goose Rocks, so they had to do a different well. I don't know if it was deeper or shallower. And yet, like, 2 brand new houses just got put up on Goose Rocks Road, closer to the beach, on the river, on the creek there.
Mhm.
And so should we be testing that, should we be requiring to know what that groundwater is like? Would we be allowed to do that? Where the groundwater is, and, is the septic field going to fail?
Yeah, the only time that we test well information is when it's first
I'm
established.
talking about septic, not well.
Oh, okay, yes.
I mean, it's a well issue too,
Right.
but I assume you can dig your way around the well problem. I don't think you can, if the groundwater is such, and I'm talking about the dug well
Right.
which would, basically fed into a pond at Black Rock. So
Mhm.
it was sitting at the surface. But I'm putting a septic field in my backyard.
Mhm.
Is it going to function,
Mm.
given its location?
So I thought Goose Rocks was on the sewer.
No, very limited part of Goose Rocks. This is a mile in. This is, and at Goose Rocks even, except for one location, everything on the other side of the bridges into Goose Rocks were on town sewer. But everything on the inland side was never put on. So you have a bunch of neighborhoods up by the community house and
Oh,
all
and
those
they're not
roads
on
that were
sewer?
developed later. All of them are on septic. As well as everything else. I mean, where do you hit your next sewer? Cape Porpoise?
That's a good question.
I thought Binnacle?
Yeah,
Pinnacle Hill, yeah, that's the only property and the houses that were between them and the beach became, there were like 6 houses that could connect that previously had no sewer on the other side of that bridge. On New Bedford. But, this is a mile back that I'm talking about.
Mhm. I'm trying to see if I can find it for you, but that's,
Find what?
we can get you the answer for that, to see about this salinity testing.
I don't know if anybody's doing it.
Yeah, I need to go look and see if I can
Yeah.
find it. Yeah.
And, in a dry summer, like
Yeah.
this summer, there's no water anywhere.
Right,
So
that's another conversation
you
that,
couldn't test it this summer, probably. Okay, thanks.
yep.
All right. So anything else on stormwater? Okay. So next was, one of our requirements, and I mentioned it at our last meeting, right, is to changes in the capital plan that potentially could have an impact on the common. Right? So I asked Galen and Nadia if they could provide some details, and so they've sent that all to us. I don't know if anyone really had an opportunity to kind of dig into it at all,
Oh, I didn't see anything.
the capital plan. It came out with the agenda. It's
Oh, I missed it,
Yeah,
totally,
okay.
sorry. I didn't look at the agenda till the
I
parking
saw a
lot.
lot of big numbers in there.
Hmm?
I saw a lot of big numbers in there.
Yeah, there are big numbers. I think we just, the numbers are one thing, because in the plan, we had estimates. And estimates are, they're plus or minus 30–40%, right, depending on what you're doing and how much information you have. I think some of the stuff that's more factual is important, that we should look at. For instance, I think the housing study talked about, it was a municipal
The
study
sewer?
done.
Oh.
Right, they talk about the fire department and potentially expanding to handle per diem, right, 'cause at some point.
So that's what that number was for, because there was a number for the town hall was in there.
Yeah, we had an estimate for a town hall, we
Right,
had a
and-
size of the town hall in there.
Was it like 2.5 million for the fires, this area, the fire station? It was an additional amount later on?
Yeah, I think the plan had, actually less than $1 million for the fire station, although that number's gone up. But that was like a 2020 number, based on an estimate. And the town hall was 3.2, I think, based on an estimate.
So there was just a lot of information here.
Yeah,
I wasn't quite sure
So
how to
maybe
approach it.
we'll
Can we
need
do it
to-
next time?
Maybe we'll need to talk about this then next time. I want to have a meaningful conversation about it and make sure that any changes we see in there, that we feel it's still consistent with the comp plan. That's all. And we need to, it's not something for whatever reason we've sort of focused on before. But looking through our ordinance, I recognize that was there, in addition to looking at land use ordinance.
Right.
To assure that it's important. And I think it's part of the state reg that we do that too. So.
Now, it seems to me, from being at the meeting about the town hall, the bond impact wouldn't be until like '28.
No.
What?
Can you speak into the microphone?
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
There-
Are we going to talk about this at the next meeting, or?
Yeah, we could,
yeah,
yeah,
okay.
so everybody can get I guess, looks like we'll need more time to discuss that. Okay. All right.
I don't have anything else.
Anything else? Anybody have
No.
anything else? Okay, so let's put this as number 1 on the agenda for next time.
Sure.
And that meeting will be 2 weeks from tonight, which will be
21st.
21st.
Did you, the next meeting, did you also want to start looking at some of the other priorities you had mentioned, or do you want to just kind of leave the meeting open for the capital plan?
Let's leave it open for the capital
improvement?
plan.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Any discussion on adjourning?
Is there a second?
A second?
Thanks.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you much. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Good conversation, folks.